Hi, my name is Ellen, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about how to read different kinds of chord charts for the guitar. So stay tuned if this is something that you'd like to learn. So in general, I've only seen two kinds of chord charts that you have to read on different kinds of websites and things like that. So we'll go ahead and look at both of them. The more common one that I think you'll see a lot is the kind that looks like this. It's usually a picture and it's just 6 little strings with dots everywhere. And so we're going to talk about how to read those. When it's in this orientation, what we're doing is we're looking at the guitar as if we're holding it up like this, okay? So the very top string is going to correspond with the low E. Then the next string goes to the A. Next string is D. Next is G, B, and then the high E string. The top one is the top string whenever you're holding your guitar, and then the bottom one is the lowest string when you're holding your guitar like this. And now what they're doing is everywhere you see a little black dot, that's where you're going to be putting your fingers. So for instance, when we do the G chord, they have a black dot on the 3rd fret of the top string, the 2nd fret of the next string down, and then on the 3rd fret of the last string. So how that's going to correspond to you is you're going to place a finger where each of those dots is. So we have a finger on the 3rd fret of the top string, a finger on the 2nd fret of the next string down, and then a finger on the very bottom string. And that's how you play a G chord, and that's how you read this chart. Now sometimes, instead of having just a black dot, they'll have a number there. And what the numbers mean are they correspond to each of your fingers. So if you see the number 1, you're going to think of this finger. This is finger number 2, this is finger number 3, and this is finger number 4. So it kind of goes in order, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So in this G chord, if it has the number 2 on the 3rd fret of the top string, then you know that you're going to put your middle finger on that top fret. If it has a 1 on the 2nd fret of the next string over, then you know that that's going to be played with your first finger. And then if it has a 3 on the 3rd fret of the most bottom string, then you know you're going to be playing that with your ring finger. So now, not only do you know where to place your fingers, but you also know which fingers to place there. Sometimes you'll see chords that have a line through them, and whenever you see that, that just is telling you that it's going to be a barred chord. So a barred chord is when you take your finger and you lay your finger across all 6 strings of the guitar to kind of cover all 6 strings. If you have trouble playing barred chords, I have a TMT tutorial right here that you can watch where I take you step by step on ways to practice them. But back to how to read them. So let's go ahead and take F major for example. They have a bar all the way across the very 1st fret. So the way we're going to play that is we're going to take our first finger and bar it all the way across the 1st fret, just like the chord chart shows. Then from there we can take what we just learned about reading chord charts and we can place our fingers in the proper positions. So we have our ring finger on the 3rd fret of the A string, our pinky, number 4, on the 3rd fret of the D string, and our 2nd finger, or our middle finger, on the 2nd fret of the G string. So now we should be able to play an F chord. Now sometimes you're going to see chord charts facing this direction, and the way you read it is exactly the same as earlier that we learned with the numberings and the black dots and the lines and what those represent. The only difference is when you're having it in this orientation, you're going to be looking at the guitar this way, up and down. So now what's on the most left-hand side is going to be your lowest E string, then A, D, G, B, and then on the very right is your high E string. So now when you see chord charts like this, it's exactly the same, except you're going to be kind of looking at your guitar from a different orientation. One more thing to realize about chord charts is sometimes you'll see an X on the chord, just like this one. The X's mean not to play that string. So for instance, in this D chord, you can see that the first 2 strings have X's on them, so that means we're not going to be strumming them. But from there, we can read the chord chart just like we have been. Now one more thing to keep in mind on chords like this, on D, We have the X's that mean not to play those strings, but we also have an O or a 0 on the D string. So what that means is we're going to play it open. And when we have an open string, that means it's not going to have any fingers. You're just going to play that note itself. From there, we can place the rest of our fingers down by reading the chart, and then we have our D chord. So let's look at this C chord as an example. Remember, it's going to be exactly the same, except we're looking at it as if we're looking at our guitar this way. So the X on the very low string means we're not going to play it. Now we have one finger on the 3rd fret of the A string, one finger on the 2nd fret of the D string. Remember, the O means open, so the string's going to be open. We have one finger on the 1st fret of the B string, and then our last high E string is going to be open. So now we have our C chord. And we've read it exactly the same way as earlier, except we kind of have to shift it around a little bit in our minds. Usually when you look up guitar chords online, they will label which string is which. So for instance, like this picture, when they do it left to right, it's kind of assumed that we're going from low E to high E, left to right, but most of the time they'll also label the low E, A, D, G, B, and high E strings. Now the last kind of chord chart I wanted to talk to you guys about is the kind that you see mostly on guitar websites like Ultimate Guitar, where you're going to learn how to play a song and they give you the chords, and instead of putting pictures like this one, because it's kind of hard to put pictures in those websites, what they do is they just put the numbers down. So it'll look something like this. Or you might recognize this from my tutorials when I have clouds come up like this. So what this is doing is it's essentially the same thing as the chord charts that we looked at earlier, except instead of a picture, we're just looking at numbers. So let's go ahead and look at an example like this. It's going to be kind of the same as we saw earlier, and what we're doing is we're assuming again that from left to right, we're going from our low E string to our high E string. So for this example, what we can see is that the very lowest string on the very left is an X, so we're not going to be playing this low E string. The next chord is an open string, so we're going to play this A open. We're going to be placing a finger on the 2nd fret of the D string, another finger on the 2nd fret of the G string, one more finger on the 1st fret of the B string, and then our top E string is going to be open. So now if we play through that, we have our A minor chord. So the advantage to having these kind of chord charts with the picture, especially the ones with the numbers inside, it's going to be really great for beginners who are not familiar with a lot of chords, because it'll tell you straightforward where to put your fingers and on what frets and how to play those. The kind that are more like this, these are more for slightly more advanced players who kind of know their chords a little bit better. It'll also show you where to place your fingers. It just won't show you which finger to place on those frets. But essentially they're kind of the same, and yeah, that's how you read chord charts. So go ahead and look up some and practice, and leave any questions you have down below and I will try my best to answer it. And yeah, thanks for joining me today. Make sure to subscribe for more TMTs just like this one in the future, where I teach you techniques and basics on guitar playing. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys in my next video. Bye!